This episode of Mayor Monday is a production of The Reporter, Delaware County's leading news source. The village of Stamford, settled in 1790 and incorporated in 1870, is located in the towns of Stamford and Harpersfield. The village has designated itself the Queen of the Catskills.
I'm Alicia Corba with The Reporter. I'm here with Mayor Bob Schneider of Stamford as a part of our Mayor Monday series. Now, neither of us are wearing masks. That's because we're both fully vaccinated, but if you are not fully vaccinated, the CDC does recommend that you remain masked up. So to start us off, could you tell us a bit about your experience as mayor of Stamford and when you became mayor?
Well, I'm moving up to my fourth year as mayor. In March, the end of March will be 3 years since I was elected. I was not necessarily interested in becoming the mayor of Stamford. I had a couple of friends here that were unhappy with the prospect that was running unopposed, and after some serious politicking talked me into running for mayor. So once I was here in the office, I had to get up to speed with what it's all about, which is a lot. It is a volunteer position. So our trustees, I find that I spend a minimum of 20 and sometimes over 30 hours a week in the mayor's office, largely due to the fact that the village has about $10 million of infrastructure projects that need to be managed, including some that you've mentioned, the swimming pool and our water project and our sidewalk project. And these are complicated and expensive, and they really need full-time oversight.
Great. So the village has recently had 2 water main breaks. Could you give us an update on the water system upgrade project in the village?
Yes, we started, the water project started before I was here. I think it really began back in the mid-2000s, like 2004, 2005. The infrastructure here in the village was begun in the 1890s by Dr. Churchill. Some of that system probably still remains here and there, which isn't unique in municipalities. So the second phase of this system, or the last phase, which was supposed to be started and completed between 2019 and 2020, was delayed because of COVID, and all these projects were shelved. So we're moving ahead with that starting in the spring of this year. And of course, the 2 issues that we had were on this older part of our water main system, and that's where we had these 2 breaches recently. So by this time next year, those will all have been replaced, and that will have pretty much updated the entire water system in the village. And parts of it were done in the mid-1980s, and then in about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now this part. And that's part of maintaining infrastructure, is that this is always going to have to be worked on. It's never really going to be completed. But we did want to get rid of some of the really old infrastructure, water infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So once we're done with that, I don't think we'll have any more of these really serious issues.
That's great. So it was recently reported in our paper that Hobart and Stamford are looking at implementing additional law enforcement to supplement the state police and the sheriff's deputies. What sparked that discussion?
That was actually put together by the mayor of Hobart. They were having some issues in the village there, and they felt that they would like to have a sheriff's deputy full-time rather than on-call, which is an expensive proposition. Mm-hmm. So they asked the village of Stamford if we would be interested in sharing that with them, and then our benefactor, the Robinson and Broadhurst Foundation, said that they would contribute to it on behalf of both villages. So it's just in the talking about it phase right now. But what it would be, as I understand it, again, that they had a meeting about this and I was not able to go to, the deputy mayor went to it on my behalf. We would get a sheriff from the sheriff's department, a deputy sheriff. We would I believe the idea is that the two villages in the foundation would pay the sheriff's department for this deputy sheriff's salary, but they would be devoted to the two villages of Stamford and Hobart. So I imagine that there would be a presence of a sheriff in each village at different times of every day. And years ago, the village of Stamford had a police department, but that's a very expensive undertaking, and we do not have the budget for something like that. But at the same time, I can see that it would be beneficial for us to have some presence of law enforcement other than just having to call the state police or the sheriff's department. So again, it's just in the discussion phase. I don't think it's a bad idea. Of course, it comes down to what it's going to cost the taxpayers. So, of course, that's a component of it, and it wouldn't simply be up to the mayor and the trustees. I believe we'd have to have a public referendum about it.
And so how is the Village of Stamford going to use its American Rescue funds?
Well, that's a good question. We're waiting to get guidance on that. I went down to, the state gave a workshop about this down in Delhi several months ago, and I went down to talk to them about that. And my major concern with our use of these funds at that time, I had no idea what they would be, was that our water infrastructure project had been put off because of the pandemic, and the cost of that project has increased quite a lot. We really don't know quite how much. And I was asking if we could use part of those funds or all of them to offset whatever overage we had there. And this was one of the things they said, absolutely, you have an infrastructure project, and it's water especially, they were very bully on. So that would be one of the things, provided that falls within the guidelines, which we just haven't gotten a solid guidance on what we absolutely can spend that money on. And we have, I just dug that out before we came, we will have gotten about $105,000. So it's not a tremendous amount of money, and that goes against a $2+ million water project.
Right.
So it may not help us very much, but it would be better than nothing.
Right. So the village has recently agreed to take possession of a building that was formerly owned by the Stamford School. Where is this building located?
This is the Churchill Memorial Building. This is where the village library is located. Dr. Churchill left in his will money to build a library for the school, which was located on Prospect Avenue back then. And that was back in, he died I think in 1917 or 1918, and it wasn't until 1924 or 25 that this building was built. It ended up not being, the land that Dr. Churchill left for the building was not suitable, so the village gave the land that the library sits on. And the goal of that was to have a library for the school, and later I think a gymnasium was added to this building, and that was the gymnasium for the school. Over the intervening years, a new school was built in 1936, and then later a new gymnasium was added to that. So the Churchill Memorial Building has become sort of useless for the school and expensive for them to maintain, and they wanted it to stay. They wanted to relieve themselves of the burden of owning it, but they wanted it to stay in some form of municipal use. So, the village is not particularly interested in acquiring real estate, although we seem to be acquiring it all the time, suddenly, and of course, that's probably my fault. But I think we'll be able to do something with it. Of course, it's a change of use. The library is going to become a tenant of the village. There's kitty corner, a daycare center downstairs there. They will become a tenant of the village too. So the village isn't looking to make money. We have to come up with a way that it won't cost us anything, and I'm fairly certain we'll be able to do that. And additionally, the school has very tight regulations on how they can use their real estate. And the village does to a point, but nothing like the school. So we'll be able to use the gym there, and I envision we'll be able to make some money on that if we were to lease that for events. Say if somebody wanted to have, like at the Cooperstown, they have an indoor farmers market. That would be great for that. It's directly next door to our new swimming pool. So it's a work in progress, but the trustees and I believe that it will be a long-term benefit to the village, although it's going to take some time to sort it out.
Yeah. So what are some of the municipal services that village residents receive?
Well, there's the water infrastructure and sewer, of course, roads, bridges, the school, just the usual municipal services that any government supplies to village. I think I've discovered since I've been here that I think we do a fairly good job. We don't carry very much long-term debt. We haven't raised taxes beyond the 2% that's allowed in the time that I've been here, and I don't anticipate us doing that this coming year. We maintain all of the village's real estate, this building, the top of the mountain, all of our parks, our municipal pool, the dog park, the various trails and things that the village owns. So we do quite a lot. I mean, it's a small town. We don't have a huge population, but I think in spite of its being run by volunteers historically, I think it's been well run, and we have a fantastic partner in the Robinson Brothers Foundation.
So the village of Stamford will soon have a new swimming pool. Why was the decision to make that new pool made?
Well, our municipal pool that was a gift to the village from the Murphy family back in the late 1950s has reached the end of its usable lifespan. We are putting between 5,000 and 11,000 gallons of water in it every single day because it leaks. It leaks like crazy. And that's, of course, the water never gets warm because we're turning the water over in it all the time. The concrete is decomposing. It's in a spot where there was a swimming hole, a partially lined pond that had been there for many years. It was very beautiful, had a fountain in the middle. But back in the 50s, they passed a law, as I understand it, that you couldn't have a municipal swimming pool or swimming hole that was dark on the bottom. So even if you have lifeguards, if somebody's under the water, because you can't see them. So the Murphys were kind enough to give the money to build the pool we have now, which has been a terrific asset to the village for 60 some odd years. But it's reached the end of its lifespan, and we couldn't rebuild in that spot due to the water table. That pool, if it's emptied out of water, the old pool, and there are not pumps running to keep the water out from underneath it, 2 times big sections of it have lifted out of the ground. So, and that's why if you look at it, it's a little wonky. So this pool is up where our Little League field used to be. It is, I'm here to tell you, it's the finest pool in this part of the state. I would have said Delaware County, but I think it extends beyond that. I mean, it's a fantastic facility. I can't wait for you to see it when it's done. And it's completely 100% a gift from the Robinson Brothers Foundation. This is, we started out at around $1 million. We're up at, we're cresting over $2.5 million now for this project with cost overruns, as you can imagine. But it's going to be a wonderful facility that's going to be here for the citizens of Stamford to use for the next 80, 90 years, I would say at least. And we will not have the problems with the water table there. So it's really, really going to be a great facility.
Great. And so finally, what do you want people to know about the village of Stamford?
Gee, I guess just that it's a great place to live. It's a great community. We have wonderful citizens. I think we have a very proactive government. I can say without hesitation that the group of people from my office to the trustees to village crew, the men at the water sewer departments and our planning boards and zoning boards and codes enforcement officer, the ladies that work here in the office. It is a wonderful group. Everybody gets along. We all have, common goals. The good of the village is what we're concentrating on. And that shows. I mean, you look around the village now versus a few years ago, we have new businesses, the whole sort of pall of gloom is lifted off of the village of Stamford, and again, as what village can have a benefactor in the form of the Robinson Broaders Foundation that's going to give us a brand new swimming pool. And even without something as obvious as that, each year, the foundation, in the few years that I've been here, their gifts to the village in the form of grants, which we have to apply for, have been in excess of the entire village budget. So there's no reason for Stamford to be anything other than a rousing success. And I think that we're very welcoming to new residents, to new businesses, and I encourage you to consider it if you'd like to move up here to Stamford.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.